We're live.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I'm your host today, Coach Jibbs. I have three beautiful gentlemen here with me on a beautiful Jersey Monday. But today we're talking rookie wide receivers. And Coach Steve, how's it doing? How you sitting there? How you feeling today?
I'll do pretty good. It's fun being in the analyst chair instead of having to host things. You know, I get to not talk as much, which sometimes is great. And we're talking rookies today, so it's gonna be fun.
Oh, they're about to tear you a new one with your rankings over there, buddy. Coach John, how are we feeling?
I feel good. I forgot I'm wearing my shirt that kind of blends in with my wall, so I look weird. But other than that, I feel awesome.
Yeah, you're lucky you don't got a green screen. You'd be bleeding. Just have your head there. Like...
It'd be just literally just a talking head at this point.
And we have Dan Tooney today. He's been on the show multiple times. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk this rookie wide receiver class. Been spending a lot of time all spring getting my rankings together and ready to go to battle for them.
Yeah, you said yours was the right one, so I'm going to hold you to the Bible.
Answers to the test. Answers to the test you're getting today.
Awesome.
All right, right before we get into this, guys, we're going to get into the news. And there wasn't really much going on over the weekend. I know it's kind of late till we get to the NFL draft, but number one, Irv Smith signs with the Bengals. How you guys feel about this?
This one interests me for sure. I mean, I think, Irv Smith is kind of hitting that age where tight ends start to either figure it out or not. I think he's still 24, 25 years old. So in potentially a high-powered offense, is a high-powered offense. He's obviously potentially a part of that. So, we watched other less athletic tight ends, thrive with Joe Burrow. So if Irv Smith can get healthy, stay healthy, I'm totally interested.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we're so close to the NFL draft, and a common mock to the Bengals was a tight end in the first round, whether it be Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington. I'll be honest, I was busy today. I didn't really get to look at the exact details of the contract as far as money goes. So, I mean, it could be a move where maybe tight end in the first round is off the board for the Bengals, which kind of will affect where some of these rookies can potentially land. But we've seen Bengals tight ends in the past be fantasy relevant. So I definitely think Irv Smith has the athletic profile to take advantage of that situation he finds himself in.
I am looking up the contract. I'm trying to look up the contract quick for you. I feel like it was a 1 year, 1 year, $1.7 million. So
yeah. So
nice. I'll go down.
Good prove it deal.
It also doesn't prevent the Bengals from addressing the tight end room during the draft at all. Maybe not first round, maybe looking second round, but I don't think it changes too much for them with that amount of money.
Yeah.
They needed to bring an upside athletic tight end to the team a little bit more than what Hayden Hurst was able to do for this team last year. And he's a great addition if he can stay healthy. I mean, there's been last year, I think people really wanted him to break out, and obviously didn't work out that way. I mean, it's a good signing for him to kind of do that, make it deal kind of thing. And for the Bengals, it's a veteran option that has that upside that if he doesn't work out, you grab yourself a rookie in the draft. And if he does, you have a potential good player to grab.
Yeah.
And let's get into some of these lesser signings. Marvin Jones Jr. gets reunited with the Lions. Also, DeAndre Carter signs with the Las Vegas Raiders. We have Scotty Miller signing with the Falcons. Darion Evans signing with the Colts. Do you guys have any discussion on these guys?
Pass.
Yeah, they're pretty much free. Marvin Jones will have his relevant touchdown again, but other than that, it ain't much.
They're just players.
They're good NFL players, yeah.
All right. Well, That's it for the fantasy news, guys. Are you ready to talk these rookie wide receivers? Instead of going top to bottom, we're going to go bottom from top. We're going to start off with number 12.
Ooh.
No.
Wait, I'm like, wait, what?
That's not me.
What? These rankings are crazy.
Oh, well, number
okay.
12. Yeah. You didn't see that, guys. Kayshawn, I'm going to say Boot.
Booty.
Okay.
Yeah, Booty.
Booty.
Okay.
So far, Coach Steve doesn't have an outside his top 10. Don outside his top 10. It's Dan's 9th ranked player. So we're going to start out there first. But as you can see, guys, he had 131 receptions, 1,782 yards, 16 touchdowns. And in 2022, he had 48 receptions, 538 yards, 2 touchdowns. And his 40 time was a 4.5. So, Dan, I see him. He's inside your top 10. So start us off, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to be real honest before we talk about Kayshawn Booty. His ranking is like hanging on by a thread with me, and I am letting the NFL tell me what to think about him, because this is a player who he had an amazing freshman year at LSU back in 2020. He had over 700 yards as a 18-year-old freshman in the SEC. I know it was the COVID year, but still, that's nothing to scoff at as an 18-year-old playing against guys that are going to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. He was there the same time Derek Stingley, the Texans' first-round corner last year, was there, and Stingley said he was one of the best players he's ever sparred with in practice. So he had an amazing freshman year, and it's been kind of a downgrade ever since then. LSU post-national championship kind of turned into a mess of a program, firing Coach O and then trying to re-find the glory that the program had just a few years ago. And off the field, things haven't been good for Booty either. We got the fighting with the coaching staff, fighting with his quarterbacks. You know, the bowl game this past year, he had the whole extracurriculars at the hotel room, which I'm sure everybody has heard about by now. But the talent is still there inside of him. And I've seen reports from NFL front offices that they are all over the place on this kid. So I am going to hold him in my top 12 and let the NFL tell me what to think about him. If he's going in the 5th round or later, then he's plummeting down my rankings outside the top 18. But if he goes late day 2, early day 3, then that's a signal to me that the NFL believes that the talent is still there and that this is a kid that they could work and try to revitalize what was once a very promising career.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And, you know, Kayshawn is one of those people who, this is exactly what we were talking about pre-show of it's really hard to, you know, make these decisions before the NFL draft even happens. He's a super volatile player. He's very he's super athletic, physical guy, great wide receiver, nothing against him. It's just, you know, what's the investment in a team? Like, what are they going to do? What do they take into account? You know, the off-field stuff, all that to me is just, and by the way, he's like my number 13. He's like right outside my top 10. He's close. So I love the talent. I love the player. It's just, to me, early production, then starts to drop off. You know, he doesn't to me show like, oh, I'm going to put this team on my back and battle back and figure things out. It's like, okay, like, you know, he's very talented wide receiver. There's a lot of talented wide receivers in the NFL. So I just question, you know, what does the NFL value him at? And so it'll be interesting for sure. You're right. Come draft day, he could be firmly in my top 8, or he could be left for dead.
I also got to say, before we go any further, that I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't love this wide receiver class in particular. And when we're in this range of players, and I say, if one of these guys like breaks out and has, you know, a superstar type of career, which one would surprise me the least? And I think this is the guy that would surprise me the least, because I have him in a tier with like Rashee Rice's, Jaden Reed, Trey Palmer, Cedric Tillman's. And I just look at those 5 storylines, and Kayshawn's the only one that I could see like having a true ceiling outcome type of thing, where we're talking about him as a fantasy difference maker.
For sure. I mean, he has one of my favorite qualities, which is hyper early breakout, which is like, you love to see it. Like you said, an 18-year-old kid going against guys who are bound for the NFL, and he's still balling out. You're like, yeah, I love to see it. It's just like, I hate that the rest of the film doesn't line up with freshman year. It's like, all right. it just stinks. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, and speaking of films, I do a lot of my evaluation, not mostly based on film, but it was like a 50-50 thing. And with a lot of the wide receivers in this class, a lot of them didn't really have big 2022 seasons. A lot of these wide receivers production came in 2021 or 2020 or even potentially 19. Like a lot of them broke out young, but they just never finished strong in their final year in college. And a guy like Booty, I mean, he has that like big playability to his game here, but there's just some things I didn't personally like about him. I was still questioning the hype around him. I was looking at everyone's rankings. He's like in the top 10. I was like, well, I'm at 16. I'm like, I even went back and looked. Like, what am I missing? I still don't personally see it. I mean, I see the downfield ability that he offers, but he doesn't show as a true complete wide receiver for me in a general sense. And the film I've watched early on in his career, his freshman year compared to the last few years, he just looks kind of slow out there on the field. He looks like, honestly, when I saw him out there, I thought he was like Leonard Fournette at first for some reason. I don't know why. It's just weird. He looked like Leonard Fournette when he has the ball in his hands. Like when Leonard Fournette has the ball in his hands, he looked like him completely. I was like, who am I watching right now? But his athletic score and the combine finished 47th overall. Definitely not great. Definitely didn't show well for me. So I dropped him even more down. I had him as a borderline top 12, and then I just dropped him after the combine here overall. I mean, again, he's not someone I'm actively looking to go get in drafts. But again, like Dan said, if an NFL team sees something that I'm obviously not seeing, I'm sure they will. That's maybe I'll continue to maybe buy back into him a little bit. But I'm kind of really out on Booty. Like I just did a draft, and I think he went in the second round. And I was like, I thought that was at the moment, just based on the talent, was just too early for me.
You know who is great at wide receiver projects like this? The Pittsburgh Steelers. If he becomes a Steeler for some reason, I just feel like that would work out. I don't know why. I just have this strange feeling like, oh yeah, like obviously Pittsburgh just nailed it again in the third round. Like, of course.
Wide receiver factor.
They're so good at it. They're so good at it.
All right, we're going to get into number 11, Cedric Tillman. Looks like he's a volunteer. Coach Steve has him 8th. Coach Don outside top 10. So as Dan, 5 seasons, he has 109 receptions, 1,622 yards, 17 touchdowns. 2022, 37 receptions, 417 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 4.54 40. Coach Steve, what's good with Cedric?
Yeah, so I completely understand why people might not have him in the top 10, top 12, top 50, whatever it may be to some people. I mean, obviously looking at his stats and what he showed this year wasn't super great on film, and it's definitely slightly concerning. But what I went back and looked at his 21 season when he had over 1,000 yards, first time in like 8 years that a Tennessee volunteer actually had 1,000-yard season as a wide receiver. Looking at the games in 2021, you look at games he played Alabama and Georgia, and he combined for almost 400 yards, 17 receptions, and 2 touchdowns, and against 2 very, for the most part, dominant defenses over the last decade. And something like that, seeing a wide receiver that can kind of dominate against the best of the best, shows that there's some talent there that's being missed. That obviously right now, what he showed us in 22 isn't that great. But I think it's still there, and I just think he needs to be coached up correctly. He has the ball skills. He has the speed. He has the strong hands to really make it to the next level. It's just that he needs to be kind of coached up a little bit and kind of get back to that form there. There's obviously things that were missing in his game this year that you don't want to see. And like I said, I think he has the talent. That's kind of why I have him at 8. He's kind of in that low round where I think if he gets to the right team, he could really make an impact at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cedric Tillman. I mean, he has another great skill set that you can't teach, which is size. In a draft full of small wide receivers, it's nice that he's, probably one of the bigger guys. So for sure, I love that about him. It depends on like what your team you're looking for and things like that. He had good release, good speed for a big guy. The only thing that I have question marks on is, 5 years and you don't have outlandish production. To me, it's like, okay, like you're probably good. You're probably really good. And for sure, Tennessee ran I'm not going to say a simple offense, but they didn't ask him to do a lot. They asked him to do, a few things, and he was good at those few things. So I just don't know how that develops into the NFL. If someone likes, again, like those big plays, those deep 50-50 balls, Mike Williams-esque, and just wants to lean into that for him, then yeah, maybe he could certainly pan out and be great. He's got the body for it. I just think there's more complete wide receivers in this class.
Yeah, I don't have him like super low. He's my wide receiver at 13, so not like crazy difference outside my top 10. But I have to agree with a lot of what Coach John said. In 5 years, he only has 167 career targets. It's not a lot of I know his I guess that'd be his junior year technically, the 2021 season. He had a great year, but then what happened to the other 4 seasons? It's just, I don't know. It's concerning when you look at his body of work overall. And then, like John alluded to, the Tennessee offense is interesting. It's not something that you're going to be able to duplicate at the NFL level. So we're going to bring this up with another player we'll talk about. And then if we were talking quarterbacks, I'd be saying the same thing about Hendon Hooker. But from a lot of what I hear in the scouting community is that evaluators have kind of like caution when looking at any of the Tennessee offensive players in this past season, just because the offense was just so unique and so little of it applies to the game at the professional level. So I don't hate Tillman as a prospect. I wish I saw more production out of his 5 years and a more complete resume, like Coach John said.
It's funny you say that because like I guess the scouts and everyone saying like they're kind of like scared of the Tennessee prospects with their offense. It kind of reminds me of like Texas Tech back in the day before like everyone went like 4 wide receiver.
Yeah, the air raid stuff with Kingsbury when he was still coaching at the college level.
Whatever.
But hey,
you look at the quarterbacks. His quarterback the first 3 years never threw more than 2,100 passing yards. I mean, and then Hayden Hooker comes in. And then he just blows up. Then I mean, it could be the quarterback. Yeah, it could be the offensive scheme, of course. But maybe it's.
It also is concerning that if you take away 2021, he's only played in 11 career games through 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm not hating. I'm just just saying.
All right, guys.
I told you. I got the answers to the test. I'm trying to teach you guys.
Xavier Hutchinson.
Yep.
Coach Steve has him 9th. Coach John has him 9th. Dan outside the top 10. 3 seasons, 254 receptions, 2,929 yards, 15 touchdowns. In 2022, 107 receptions, 1,171 yards, 6 touchdowns, and another wide receiver running at 4-5 territory. So I'll let Coach John start us off on this one.
So this is what I'll say about Xavier Hutchinson, and this is what I'll say kind of about this draft class as a whole, as we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of it. I think NFL teams will really value size. I just think they will. I think some of these, bigger guys might get propped up more because of how little a lot of the top end talent. I say little, it's like under 6 feet. I use like 6 feet as sort of like the line of demarcation for me. And so, Xavier Hutchinson, 6'2", 200 pounds, big guy, prototypical X sort of build. I think he's fast. He's got good hands to be a deep threat kind of player. Tracks the ball well. I liked a lot of what I saw. I don't know if he's as complete in the short and intermediate route stuff. I don't know if he's complete kind of in the red zone, but you want to big play. You need to take your chances with someone. I think Xavier Hutchinson fills that role and is good at it. So I have him at 9. I have him at 9, and I like it, but there are other people that I we talked about Kayshon Boutte. After the draft, there are other people that could easily jump Xavier Hutchinson. But just on film, I think he looks great.
Coach Steve?
Yeah, no, I like Hutchinson a lot. Honestly, he kind of reminds me slightly of Michael Pittman kind of player. He's got good route running ability. He's really good with contested catch situations. He's got the big hands to snag balls away from defenders real easily. He might not have the elite speed and explosiveness that some people obviously love in wide receivers, especially for the NFL level. But I feel like he can make an impact here at the next level. I mean, you saw that he can handle the role of being the volume wide receiver 1 for a team. Now, will he ever develop into an actual wide receiver 1? That's wait and see kind of approach, and depends on where he goes in the draft and how NFL teams evaluate him. But a guy who can put up big numbers with high volume kind of shows me that like they have that ability to be that alpha dog wide receiver for a team here. And we saw Michael Pittman. He wasn't the highly regarded wide receiver coming out of his class, but people liked him. And he turned up obviously to be, the Colts wide receiver one the last few years season now. So I think Hutchinson can be a similar kind of path to success at the NFL level. So that's kind of why I'm here at 9. So.
So Hutchinson, I saw at the Senior Bowl live in person, and I wasn't super impressed. Now, obviously, that's just 4 days at a practice. It's not, shouldn't be the judge of a player's entire career, but then his testing numbers came out with athleticism. I've been using a lot of RAS score stuff this year, relative athletic score, and his RAS score came in at 7.45. And from what I've heard from friends who work in the scouting community, 8 is what most NFL teams use as like a baseline for we want you to be 8 or above in that score. So it just worries me that the athleticism's not there. And I hate to say it, he comes off as a player that was a great prolific college producer, which he was. He had over 2,700 career receiving yards. But I just don't know if he's going to translate as well to the NFL as some of these other prospects that we're going to be talking about as we get further into the show.
That's fair. I do worry that his development is sort of at its peak. Like you've seen him, like
that's kind of how I feel.
Like he's and I put in my notes out of box X receiver. Like he's just like I don't know, Devontae Parker. Like you could just put him out, like he'll be fine. Like he could do it. Like he'll be able to do whatever you need. So I just think there is some value to that in the NFL. But you're right, for fantasy development and all that. Like it's like he's probably. We know what he is at this point.
Come on, Devontae Parker is amazing. If he just didn't get hurt.
Don't get me started on Devontae Parker. Oh my God. Don't get me started on him.
And that's actually a good point that you brought up, John, is like being a prototypical X receiver. And there's not that many of them in this draft class. We'll talk about 1 or 2 more as we go down this list. So I just remind people as they're listening to this that just remember that there are less players in this class that are prototypical X receiver sized, and a lot of NFL teams are going into the draft assembling a wide receiver room similar to a basketball team. They're not just taking the best receiver on the board. They're like, all right, well, we have 3 slot receivers. We don't need another slot. We need an X. So keep in mind that is going to affect the draft capital of players like Xavier Hutchinson, and somebody we'll talk about a little bit later, that they may go a little bit higher than they would in another year just because of how undersized this class is.
100%. Well, someone once said to me, if you were a fighter, you want a combination of punches. You don't just want one punch. And so that's what these teams are going. And we talk about it in running back rooms now too. It's like all these NFL teams are looking for a myriad of ways to win. And so you're right. You're right. And that's why I think I have Xavier Hutchinson a little bit higher, because I do think his draft capital will be up there.
Yeah.
Styles win fights, baby. For number 9, we have Nathaniel Dell. He's outside Coach Steve's top 10. Both John and Dan have him 8th, and he's had 3,155 yards, 228 receptions, 32 touchdowns in 3 seasons, and 109 receptions, 1,400 yards, and 17 touchdowns. And he ran a 4.49, just under 4.5. So, Dan, I'll let you start us off. You're the guest.
Yeah, so I talked last about Hutchinson and how I saw him at the Senior Bowl and a little underwhelmed. And Tank Dell was the exact opposite. He was just out there winning all his routes, getting open, super fast in one-on-ones. A quick story that's going to stick with me throughout this whole draft process is, I think it was on practice day 3, the Panthers corner coach was coaching the defensive backs, and they were doing this one-on-one drill. And it wasn't like a volunteer basis about who would go out there, but they'd grab a guy and send him out, all right, you go up one-on-one against this guy. None of the defensive backs of the Senior Bowl wanted to go up against Nathaniel Dell, because you have to remember they're there getting tape on as well as the wide receivers. So they didn't want to go out there because they all knew that they were going to get put into a blender, and they didn't want that tape on their resume for teams to look at. So that kind of describes the level of week Nathaniel Dell had at the Senior Bowl. Now, listen, I'm not saying the guy's the next Antonio Brown, because let's be honest, he's he's super, super small. I think I currently weigh more than him. And I'm
Same.
far, far less athletic when it comes to the wide receiver position. So I am concerned about how he's going to win at the next level. I feel like he will easily be bodied and bullied and pushed around if a corner can get hands on him. But the good thing is, I got to say, he gets open so quick, it's hard to get hands on him. So he wins in a very specific way. And he's the type of player where I can move off my position very quickly. If I see like through 4 weeks that he's being bodied at the NFL level, and that was my concern coming into this pre-draft process, then I can quickly move off of, whatever Nathaniel Dell shares I have, because that's a confirmation of the worry that I had about him.
Smart.
Yeah. Dude, it's funny. I wanted to ask you about Nathaniel Dell at the Senior Bowl, because he really did show out. I remember I'll never forget the release that he had where he literally crisscrossed and then ran around in the end zone on this guy. I'm like, I've never seen a release like that. It's just it looks, and when you watch it on film too, it just looks like he's out there just faster, quicker than everybody. It's like, oh, okay, but you're right. In the NFL, where space is a premium and guys are bigger, stronger, faster, does that translate? And you're right. I don't know. I put in my notes, could be higher. If he lands in Kansas City and Andy Reid gets his hands on him and space is not a problem because they're doing a million different things to create space for him, then yeah, he's going to be awesome. But you can't Jimmy rig Nathaniel Dell into any offense and have it work. That's the problem. And so I don't know. I think he's a good player. I like a lot about him, but 162 pounds that's a tough hurdle to try and jump in the NFL to be successful at that size.
How tall is he?
5'8".
5'8", 162.
He's my height, Jibs.
That's that in my notes.
Very tiny.
Listen, if you're listening, Nathaniel, I love you. That is a tough pill to swallow going into the NFL. That's all.
Yeah, he's obviously fast. He has a lot of great qualities you love in a wide receiver. But for me, obviously the size, it's a major issue. I don't see him ever really being a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 all the way for a team. Wide receiver 3, kind of a guy who can be somewhat of a gadget player. Obviously a little bit more, I think, than a gadget player. Better. I think he's obviously, be better than Kadarius Tooney has shown us so far in the NFL. But I just don't see him being a prototypical wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 for fantasy for an NFL team at this point. And honestly, he's got a drop issue. He had 21 drops over the last 2 seasons now. And he's a fast wide receiver. I love that, but I just don't see him being a prototypical wide receiver. So that's kind of why he's outside my top 10. My top 10 are more players that I feel that can be wide receiver 2s and 1s at the next level. I don't know if Dell can.
Steve, imagine him in the Dolphins.
He's probably the best man.
I'm back in, baby. I'm back in.
That's honestly, that's the type of team that I'd want him to land on, is somebody who's going to create the space for him with pre-snap motions and things like that. And I think Mike McDaniels would be the perfect coach to pair with his skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously people
to do that. I think.
What's that?
He'd have to go undrafted, and I don't see that happening. So. You're gonna be a great return man. Mark my word, great return man.
Jesus. Okay. Rashee Rice, number 8. Coach Steve has him 7th. Coach John has him 7th. Dan has him 10th. In 4 seasons, he had 233 receptions, 3,111 receiving yards, 25 touchdowns. In 2022, he had 96 receptions, 1,355 yards, 10 touchdowns, and another receiver running 4.5s. When am I getting the Ferraris, guys?
They're coming.
Jesus.
There's not many of them, but there's a couple.
Coach Steve, I'll let you start us off on this.
Told you this is a shit class. They're obviously better than all of us here, but in terms of what we've seen over the last few years, I actually saw something on Twitter. It showed the last 4 years, and I'm just like, damn, those wide receiver classes have been nice.
Yeah,
very upsetting.
We've been blessed.
But no, I like Rice a lot. Honestly, I took him in the 3-8 spot in my recent rookie draft that I just recently did, and I thought it was a steal for me personally. he's definitely someone who on film I like watching a lot. He showed up a lot on film for me. You know, he developed well over his college career. Somebody who has got the size and athleticism. He's got ball skills. He's someone who can make defenders miss and gain those yards after the catchability here. And he finished top 8 in terms of combine score and production score, which I really like to see that as well. He's obviously not being talked about up enough, I think mostly just because of where he went to school. Personally, that's how I feel about it. He doesn't have that top end speed, but I like him a lot. Now I'm very curious where he ends up at the NFL level, because obviously that will really determine on where I have him ranked after that. But if he lands in the right situation, I'm really excited about what Rice can do. I mean, if he ends up in the right spot, I mean, he could end up being an early second round pick in drafts.
Ooh.
Yeah, I saw similar stuff on Rice. I think he's, big play, good body control, good hands at the catch point. Like, he does all those things at 50-50 ball that you like. The stuff that bothered me a little bit, and I have him at 7th. And again, I think I'm a sizist during this draft class, I'm realizing. But the couple things I didn't love is, and maybe this is also a same school kind of scouting, but Cortland Sutton had more production with a similar style of play in that offense. And it's like, I get it. It's different times. Everything. It's like, you're in SMU, you're a big guy, you're fast, you got great hands. I wanted more like top end plays, more top end production. It was like, yeah, he's a solid wide receiver for SMU. Like, I love it. Like, good guy. He's probably going to be a great pro. I just don't know where the ceiling is on Rashee Rice. That's the only one of my biggest question marks. Is where I don't think he'll fail out of the NFL. I think he's probably fine. He'll good enough, but does he ever really ascend to be a team's focal point? I'm like, I don't know, probably not. But that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. So shameless plug, but I actually did a full deep dive write up on dynastynerds.com on Rashee Rice. So if you want my full thoughts, it's like a 2,000 word article. So that's the place to go check that out. But I have to agree, body control was a big A+ for me. There's so many clips where he goes up and he has to contort around a defender to pull the ball in, and it was like watching a gymnast up there when he was vertical. This is going to sound weird, but the one thing that I took away while watching film as a negative is it seemed like he gave up on plays very easily. Any play that I noticed that he wasn't involved in, say he was wide side and there's a screen to the boundary side, ball would be snapped and he's not even taking like a step to try to sell his route at all. And now, listen, I'm not an NFL head coach or on a coaching staff, so I don't know how much they take that into account. But I feel like if I'm seeing that, then they got to be seeing that as well. And then the other knock is his long speed. He's not going to be beating you down the field. And even if he catches, because one plus I had for him was his deep ball tracking. He was able to keep track of where the ball is in the air very, very well. But once he catches it, he's getting chased down by a corner. I was on Garrett Price's show, I want to say last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, we were talking about Rice and how he will find success for fantasy purposes at the NFL level. And he's going to be that PPR, high volume, low ADOT type of receiver, where he's going to have
Deontay Johnson?
Yeah. Kind of exactly. Like a perfect season for him is going to be a wide receiver 2 finish, where he has, 120 receptions, but only, maybe 1,100 yards, like nothing crazy like that. So I think if he lands on the right offense, he's going to be a great floor player for your fantasy purposes, where you have like one of your all-star receivers on bye. You're like, all right, I need 10 PPR points this week. All I need is 10 to win. And then Rice is going to be there for it. But if you need any more than that, it's going to be a little bit of a push. So he's still in my top 10, and I like what he can maybe do at the next level. Just there are some concerns as far as the ceiling is concerned for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's got bonkers. All right. Number 7. Oh, name I heard. Josh Downs. Coach Steve has him 6th. Coach Don has him 10th. Dan has him 5th. He had 94 receptions in 2022, 1,029 yards, 11 touchdowns, 448 Coach, actually, Dan, start us off. Why Josh?
Yeah, so I love Josh Downs, and I'm so glad that the NFL scouting community is coming so much higher on him, where you're seeing him at the back end of the first round in NFL mock drafts. I just think he is an electric playmaker who has the chance to get on an NFL offense and really make a difference right away. He has back-to-back years with over 1,000 receiving yards in North Carolina, and we had to remember that yes, he had Sam Howell as his quarter. Well, we went from Sam Howell to Drake May, so he didn't really downgrade in quarterback at all at North Carolina. But when he gets to the NFL, that's the type of quarterbacks he's going to be playing with. So he's just like an athletic difference maker that I think is going to have the draft capital that's going to justify taking him fairly early in your dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, this is the one that once I was so I'll look at all my players and then I'll start to compile and this was the one that I couldn't find a place to put him. And I was like getting frustrated because I'm like, I don't want to put him above Tank Dell. Like I like Nathaniel Dell a little more. I think he's similar. Like, I mean, Josh Downs is bigger, more complete, but I guess if I was there, so then that puts him at like, again, then I got elitist with the size with Rashee Rice. So I guess he's probably more like in that range, closer to Rashee Rice maybe, but I guess. But anyway, my point being, he's a good wide receiver. I like him. I don't know why I have him at 10. He has back-to-back years of production and, improving on that production, which you like to see. He had a year where he was averaging 100 yards a game. Like, that's insane. So, yeah, I mean, production's there. Everything is there. It's just I didn't think he was great with physicality at the line of scrimmage, and that worries me at the next level where I'm like, okay, if he starts getting into a lot of situations with physical corners, he might struggle. But, with the ball in his hands, he's great. He's fast. So sure, in the right system, we talked about, McDaniels, both McDaniels, Oakland or Vegas or Miami, the right play caller gets his hands on him. It could be great. I just think if he gets stuck, if he gets stuck in Houston, like, that's going to stink.
Yeah. No. Like I said, like I'm pretty like in the middle with him. Obviously, in my top 10 here. Obviously, he was definitely someone. I think you guys said a lot of it. I mean, highly productive, dynamic, explosive. Great run after the catch, crafty route runner. I saw a lot on film that his ability to kind of deal with contested situations was a lot better for being such a small guy that he is. That I was pretty impressed when I saw that. Again, his height and weight kind of makes him kind of drop from being like a top 4 guy to down to 6 for me. That kind of dropped him a little bit just in that sense, just because he is a smaller guy, but he's got a lot of great qualities that I do like in him. And I'm interested to see where he ends up at the next level.
Yeah. I mean, I put early second as like a grade on him. So if he goes early second to someone, the problem is it's going to be a kind of a crappy team. That's what stinks. That's the only thing that stinks is he might go, Colts, and it's like, oh, great. Like, I just feel like they're not going to be able to utilize his talents.
Oh, Kyle says, yes, Downs is a top 5 wide receiver in this class.
Nice, Kyle.
Yeah, and I do trust Kyle a lot. So
Kyle also already has the answers. Kyle already has the answers for the test.
Clearly, he read the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to number 6, Marvin Mims. Coach Steve has him 10th. John has him 4th. Dan has him 6th. 3 seasons, 123 receptions, about 2,400 receiving yards, 20 touchdowns. 2022, 54 receptions, 1,083 yards, 6 touchdowns. And we got a little fast guy, 4.38, so he's under 4.4. Coach Steve, I'm actually gonna let you start us off since you're so, I wouldn't say down, but you got him significantly lower than the rest of the guys.
Yeah, no, and I don't hate Mims at all. I really like Mims and where I probably could get him in drafts, to be honest, depending on where he goes to. There was just a few things that kind of really just, for me, having him to be an elite receiver in this class is just that his kind of role at the next level here. I mean, he has that, big playability and obviously things like that, but And I'd like to see a more expanded route tree. From what I watched on film, there was a lot of like nines and whatnot and hooks, but nothing really else out there that really like said, oh, okay, like I know that he can do this at the next level. To be someone who has a full route tree under his arsenal a little bit there. And it's things like that kind of have me a little bit low on him, but I do really like them a lot there. I'm really hoping that he does land in the right situation, but I just like a lot of the other guys more than Mims overall. But I get why you guys have him that high, just that there's just a few things that kind of turned me off on him a little bit.
I'll be honest, I thought I was high on Mims, but then Coach John said, hold my beer.
Yeah. So I'll be honest. This one was, to me, again, I'm looking at like, once you get outside the top 3, then you get into this kind of nebulous of like 5'9", 5'10", fast, decent. And to me, Marvin Mims in that group of people, the Zay Flowers, the Josh Downs, like all these people, like he just on film looked the best. He was a gamer. Like, and that's just to me like important, where you're like, all right, this guy's always in the right place, always seems to be where he needs to be. Like his yards after the catch was great. He's physical with the ball in his hands. You know, he's got some of the best yards per reception in this draft class. Like these are things that I think equate to just a talented wide receiver. And like, yes, it's not the most nuanced route running in short space, but Tyler Lockett wasn't that way early on either. And he turned out just fine. And if you could have rookie year Tyler Lockett, you'd be like, yeah, all right, it's fine. I'll work with this. So I think Marvin Mims could easily develop into that role with the chance that there might be a little bit more, where he does get a little bit more polished in the short area route running and becomes sort of a red zone threat as well as a deep zone threat. Because he's a separator. He can get space. He's always seems to have a step on the defender. Like to me, that's important. And at the next level, 4.38, his game speed is off the charts. People couldn't catch him. So, that's the type of stuff that I look for in a wide receiver when I go, if he was 6 feet, I'd be like, he could easily be in this top conversation. So in my opinion,
I like that comparison.
Yeah, because this receiver class we've been saying is on the smaller side, and I hate to say it, but 5'11", 177 is kind of one of the bigger dudes in this
class. Yeah, it's solid in this class.
I like that he produced with 3 different quarterbacks at Oklahoma. He had Spencer Rattler for his first year, second year split between Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams, and then Dylan Gabriel this past year. The other thing I love is his biggest year of production was this past year on what was a terrible Oklahoma team, because Lincoln Riley left in the middle of the night last offseason. It just took Caleb Williams and a bunch of other signees with him. And Marvin Mims was still able to have a 1,000+ yard season. So we've seen him do it with a number of quarterbacks throwing to him in a number of in 2 separate offenses. And this is the first guy that's really combines the size with the speed, which is something that is almost like a baseline for a ceiling type of wide receiver, one fantasy football wide receiver. And yeah, I'm on the same page as Coach John. He's easily in like a tier. I still haven't settled on my tiers yet, but he's either like tier 2 or tier 3 for me. There's you got your big 3, but then after that, there's any number of 5 guys can make their case for being in the top 5 based on draft capital alone, which we'll find out in 3 short weeks here.
Crazy.
Speaking of top 5, Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. Coach Steve has him 4th. Coach John has him 6th. Dan has him 6th. Speedster again, 108 receptions, basically 1,769 yards, 15 touchdowns. Yeah, 15 touchdowns last year as well, 67 receptions and 1,267 yards. Woo! Wow. Who wants to go first on this one? Who wants to talk about this Tennessee Volunteer?
I'll take the stab at it. Like we already mentioned with Tillman, the Tennessee offense was very unique when it comes to what they run and not very transferable to the NFL level. However, what is transferable is his speed and his deep ball skills. Now, I'm going to say this very early on that I think Hyatt might be the type of player where he is more useful for his real life NFL team than he is for your fantasy team. I think he's going to be brought into an offense as a deep threat, and he's not going to like take the top off the offense every time with like super duper deep speed, but he's going to keep those safeties in check as far as they won't be able to sneak down into the box as much as they would like. That being said, it doesn't mean he couldn't be very, very successful for fantasy football. I just think he's going to be a more useful asset for his real life NFL team, but that still carries value in the dynasty community. If he is still out there logging 70% snap share and getting, 7 targets a game, even if he's not producing, he's tradable. A lot of people, when they're looking for trade assets, they look for snap share, they look for targets. So don't always think that you're drafting these players to win you a championship right away. Sometimes you're just drafting a player for a little increase on value. And Hyatt might be the type of guy that's going to have a brand name recognition halfway through his rookie year where, you might be able to trade him for a 2024 pick, which will potentially be a better wide receiver class at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, listen, I hate player comps, but in my notes when I was watching Jalen Hyatt, I just put Will Fuller ? And so that's just kind of the vibe I got, where I'm like, yeah, he's very good at like a couple things. He's good at deep balls. He's good at goes. He decelerates pretty quickly for a fast guy, which is nice. It shows that he can do kind of different routes than just deep ball stuff, but yeah, I think he, to Dan's point, he's very much going to be a good, keep a defense honest kind of player, but I'm not sure he's, he even is Will Fuller. I'm not sure he's even that. So I think he's good. He's got the speed, and a team hopes he develops into that. But that's kind of, where I see him. He's fast. He's fast. It's great. It's good to be fast. It's good to be big. But how does he develop the rest of his game? It's just hard to tell because Tennessee didn't ask him to do anything. They just asked him to run fast and be fast, and he is. So it's hard to get a good gauge scouting him because of just the stuff he has on film.
I feel like you guys said a lot of good things that I don't really have much more to say in terms of his hype. Obviously, I have him fourth, and the reason I have him that high is that, I love Speeden in terms of a wide receiver overall. I mean, his vertical skill set is just something that was fantastic to watch on film. And one thing I really liked is it's underrated. If not underrated, but I'd like to highlight is his footwork. On his route running, his footwork is fantastic. There was one play, I forget which game it was against, but he just took 1 or 2 steps in a different direction and just completely just destroyed a safety in terms of his ability to get past them. It was really bad to watch. It was just like a Jew play. And he was 5 yards downfield. It was just incredible to watch. And, like John said, like I actually compared him to Will Fuller too. And we know Will Fuller, when healthy, was a fantastic wide receiver in Houston. Obviously, he had Watson with him. But, again, somebody who had, in terms of on NFL.com, the number 1 ranked combine grade and number 1 ranked production grade overall. And he showed that he has the skills. I think he has the skill sets to make it at that next level and be a really good wide receiver too, with upside to be a wide receiver 1 at the next level. So it's kind of why I have him here at 4.
It's so funny now that we're going through this exercise and doing this, and this is why I love shows like this. I'm realizing that people's wide receiver rankings this year are going to tell you a lot about what they value in a wide receiver, because there's so much sort of outside the top 3. There's so much kind of nebulous in conversation. You could make a case for a big guy. You can make a case for a fast guy. You can make a case for a short area quickness, small guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just interesting. You bring up speed. Obviously, if you love speed, like Jalen Hyatt's the guy. Like that's who you want. That's your Ferrari.
Sure do.
I definitely could see your case on these because, like, I probably couldn't pick between any of these guys.
It's so
5
tough.
I knew.
It's so
But
tough.
like, it's good to have some options in the middling second tier as well.
That's why the draft capital landing spot is going to play a big role this year, because
100%.
there's so many players that I've ranked so closely and so tightly that, like I said with a couple of these guys already, I'm just going to let the NFL tell me what to think about them. If a guy falls to the 5th round, I'm not saying he's off my board, but I'm not looking at him till late 3rd, early 4th, my rookie drafts.
Yeah, 100%.
all the wide receivers are like that, honestly. Like you can have them; they're all for me. They're not that far apart. No one really stands out too much over the bunch, but it depends where they get drafted. Is going to change everything.
All right, then. Tell me about Zay Flowers, Coach Chief.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Coach Steve. You are that coach.
Zay Flowers has been someone over the last month or so now, after my initial rankings, that I've been growing on a lot here. I know, and it's part of rewatching film, part of what I'm hearing about him by other NFL teams, and that they really do like Zay Flowers, that he ends up possibly really being a first-round pick. I mean, just electric player in space. You give this man the ball, and he's just going to go with it and find his way into the end zone. Again, he's a small guy, and just like a lot of these wide receivers, he's a really small guy, but his abilities to do things with the ball in his hand, he can work at all three levels of the defense, and his versatility on the field is fantastic. I think they can line him up every which way. He played a lot in the slot, but I think he can play on the outside. I think he has that speed, and his way he tracks balls is just fantastic to be able to play as an outside wide receiver as well. So I think some of these other guys might be more into the slot role only, while I think Zay Flowers can be more of an outside number 2 guy. I don't know if he's going to be a number 1 guy ever per se, but definitely could be a solid 2, but definitely a really, really good wide receiver 3 for a team.
As an alumni of Boston University, it hurts to talk well of anything Boston College. So I'm going to try and get through this without throwing up. But Zay Flowers is really good. And the thing is, and this will be a fun stab at BC, their quarterback play always sucks. BC is not known for like high-powered offenses. And so the fact that Zay Flowers could stand out at BC makes me think like, oh, wow, because he does. He looks athletic. He looks explosive. And again, in an offense that isn't very known to be that. So that super athletic player, those types of things can definitely translate to the next level. And I love to see that. Great quickness, good release in the red zone. Another thing that I think he'd be good at. I think he's I put a solid out of the box pro. Like I think he will be able to get most offenses. Most coordinators can figure out what to do with him. But again, my only question and why I have him so low is I just don't know what this ceiling is compared to the other guys. Like I think some of the other players I have above him just have this potential to be a 1, where I don't know if Zay Flowers ever has that potential to be a 1. But like you said, Steve, could be an amazing 2 for a team. Could be a solid 2 for a team. But if I'm going to invest highly in a rookie draft, I want a guy who has a potential to be a focal point on an offense.
Yeah, I'm going to echo most of what everyone said so far. Zay Flowers is the top of my tier 2 for me right now. I don't know if he will break into that tier 1 before the NFL draft happens, but he is very explosive. His 10-yard split was a 1.49, which was top 3 in this draft class, which means his get-off speed is elite. Yeah. And he's going to be the type of player where if he lands in an offense where they know how to utilize that correctly, he's going to have great years. I don't think he's going to be that year-over-year wide receiver 1, a la Mike Evans or now a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. But I think we're going to see him have a year or 2 where he finishes as a top 5 wide receiver based on touchdown upside alone. So he's, like I said, he's the top of my tier 2. He's not in the big 3. And I want to say 5 or 6 wide receivers in that tier 2. And at that point, I'll let draft capital tell me what to do to them. But everything I've seen from the mock draft community and the scouting community is that he's going to go in the back end of the first round, which is going to tell me a lot about what NFL teams think about him. And the other thing is, unless you're the Chiefs drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if you're drafting an offensive player in the first round, you have a plan on how to use them. So he's going to see the field the first year. So he's the top of my tier 2. But like I said, there's probably 5 or 6 guys that can fall anywhere within in that tier based on draft capital and landing spot alone.
Yeah, Zay Flowers is one of those guys that I think will fall right in that danger zone, not danger zone, but like good zone of like a great team could draft him because he'll be late in the first and some already productive offense will be like, oh, let's just add Zay Flowers and be even better. And you're like, yeah, all right. And then
The New York
you're right.
Giants.
The New York Giants. And then the touchdown upside just comes through the roof because I think he is so great in the red zone. I think he's so good in short areas.
I gotta say, I hate seeing people mocking Zay Flowers to the Giants because don't the Giants already have like 4 Zay Flowers in the team already?
Basically.
Like,
And
you know, I was
Remember
talking
we talked about a boxer needing various punches.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you
It's
know,
the same. You're hitting them with a jab over and over and over again.
like give them Xavier Hutchinson in the 3rd round. That would make a lot more sense.
Yeah,
all right, let's get into number 3.
the big boys.
Jordan Addison, I believe he plays for USC, if I'm correct. 217 receiving yards, 3,134 yards, 29 touchdowns, 59 receiving yards, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 for 40. Coach Don, you have him number 1. I'm going to let you start us off.
So this one is purely a ceiling play, and this is really from his 2021 film and putting up 1,600 yards and 17 touchdowns or whatever craziness he did. And so I think Jordan Addison, at his size, his speed, his route running ability, I think he's good enough that if he can develop a little bit, he could be a team's number 1. I believe that. I think he's the change from Pitt to USC, I would have expected similar or more numbers. The fact that it went dramatically down sucks, and that hurts. But I do think that he can still flourish in most offenses. And so I think that a team looks at him, looks at his ability, sees his sort of, the season that he put up with Kenny Pickett and says, look, I think an offense can be built around this. Clearly, Kenny Pickett did it and became a first-round pick because of it. So I think Jordan Addison, to me, out of the big 3 that we're going to start to talk about, he is the one that has the most upside. So that's why, for me, he's my number 1 overall. Now, all 3 of them are great wide receivers that we're going to talk about. I just think Jordan Addison has that little bit more of a, I don't even like saying it, but has that little bit more of like a Jamar Chase, big 1,600-yard season in him. So that's just what I see.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll also go real quick here. With Addison, a lot of his traits are like A+, but then there's some of them that are just like Fs for me. He just very up and down in terms of what I see in talent with him. Obviously, like John mentions, like separation. Obviously, his route running, yards after catch ability, dynamic with the ball in his hand is fantastic. And obviously, he showed that he can handle a bigger workload, but his physicalness is just, to me, is a concern overall. Like, is he going to be able to play at the next level against bigger physical cornerbacks? That's a big concern for me. Is he going to be just in the slot? Is he just going to be a slot wide receiver? I mean, he weighs like 175 pounds. It's definitely not what you want to see. That's what he weighed in at the combine. And he just dealt with drops last year. And the fact that he kind of, he got injured last year. So I'll give him obviously a pass because of that. And obviously he's still in my top 3, but the fact that he went to another offense here, kind of played with the potential number 1 quarterback or number 1 player in next year's draft and didn't really take that next level. It's definitely a concern to me at that point, but that's kind of why I'm at 3, just because there's just too many other things. There's a lot of great, but there's also a lot of bad things that just didn't like, while the other 2 guys, I think we'll talk about them in a minute, that have more great and good things about them.
Yeah. One thing I like to bring up is he is a former Belindikoff Award winner. Let me remind you the guys that he's competing with for that award: Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks. Not a chump change type of year. And then, Jalen Hyatt won it this season, which kind of speaks for everything about the wide receiver class right now. But Addison is in my tier 1, like you both have said. We've got all 3 of us probably have a tier 1 of 3 wide receivers. And I think he is going to, that the concern that's coming out right now is the frame, the frame and the size. And have we mentioned that for everybody so far? So if they all have frame and size concerns, why not go with the kid who won the Belindikoff one year? And the only reason he didn't produce this year was because he was hurt for most of the year. So I love Jordan Addison, and I know, John, you hate player comps, but I see a lot.
I just don't like doing them because I stink at them. That's why.
I see a lot of Stephon Diggs in his game.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And he's my third ranked player. So as far as like overall draft structure goes, I hate to say it, but like once I'm outside this top 3, I'm kind of out on the wide receivers this year.
Mhm.
There's just maybe 5 or 6 running backs I would rather take instead.
Mhm.
Just for the upside, because I see this wide receiver class having a lot of your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3s. And I really don't see many outside this top 3 producing wide receiver fantasy football numbers for you, but they're all going to be taken in the first round of your rookie drafts. So it's interesting to see how first rounders, the value changes year over year. But this wide receiver class, I don't think has a lot of ceiling outcomes in it, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you for sure.
Number 2, Quentin Johnson. This is Coach Steve's number 1 wide receiver. John's third, Dan's second. 3 seasons, 115 receiving yards, about 2,200 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns in 2022, 60 receptions, 1,069 yards, 6 touchdowns. He didn't run a 40, so he's playing with our emotions, guys.
Not at the combine, at least.
Not at the combine. So pro day specialist. Coach Steve, what do you got on Quentin Johnson? Your number 1
So like I
receiver?
mentioned, we've all mentioned, a lot of these wide receivers in this class are small, skinny guys. Quentin Johnson is not a small, skinny guy. He's a big guy in terms of what is shown in this class here. I mean, he's someone that when I watched film on him, my eyes lit up. Somebody has playmaking ability. He's got a rare size, speed, and quickness to his game, elite speed, even though we didn't see the 40 time here, but on film, you can see the speed there. He has that X factor ability. And now people might bring him down because he played at TCU and why they obviously were really good this coming season here. Year prior, you really see that he didn't really do too crazy in it. You saw 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns this year. I mean, 2 other seasons, he had just about 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. So, just this year was his big breakout season. It was a little bit later in his career compared to some other guys that in this top tier range who broke out in a younger age. But, I think I can see him really being a number 1 wide receiver and for an NFL team, like a true wide receiver 1 for an NFL team. While everyone else on this list here obviously are really, really good, but I don't know if they're actually going to be true wide receiver 1s. I think Johnston can do that and will be a wide receiver 1 at the next level here for whatever NFL team takes him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love Quentin Johnson. When we get to the top 3, I think all 3 of them are good prospects. It's just you have to slot them in somewhere. And for me, the only having 1 year of 1,000 yards and it being just barely over 1,000 yards, that's the only knock on Quentin Johnson I have. Is I'm like, yeah, you're really good. You're unbelievable. You're super strong. You're physical. Good route runner, strong hands at the catch point, good release, all the things you want to see. It's just I wish I saw more of it on film so then I could have my conviction going into the NFL. That's the only thing. Other than that, but if he goes to the NFL and lights it up, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he's built like it. He's an absolute monster. 6'3", I think I have him 6'3", 210, which is, it's great. So my only concern and my only knock why I have him below the other 2 is just the 1 year of 1,000, little over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I say that out of the big 3 for me, Quentin Johnston is the most likely to bust in my eyes, just in the way he wins and the role he will fit at the next level. My concern for him now, my buddies at work, we became big TCU fans this past season. We were betting a lot on TCU every Saturday. It became our tradition. And he disappeared in a lot of games. As much as he had highlights, I think he also disappeared a lot. He had 5 games this past year where he had fewer than 30 yards, and he had 3 games with fewer than 4 receptions. And I would like to see more out of him. And as we've said many, many times in this podcast, the frame issues with this class are going to elevate a player like Quentin Johnston into top 18 draft capital when it comes to April 27th. And he's going to be a first round pick in all your rookie drafts. Let me put it this way. If I was in 10 rookie drafts and I had the chance to select Quentin Johnston or any of these other wide receivers, I would take him in maybe 4 or 5 just to spread out the risk. Because I feel like if I had to pick one player from the top 3 to be a bust, it's going to be Quentin Johnston in this draft class. Now, listen, I'm not saying I hate him. If he drops me at the end of the first round, I'll happily take him. But just not super high on Quentin Johnston. I know I have him ranked second, but as I'm talking about this, I'm going to go adjust my rankings after we get off the show.
It's funny you say that. I have on here high variance outcome under my notes. I'm like, there's just a high variance. Like a lot could happen. He could be DK Metcalf. He could be, I don't know, Blackman, Justin Blackman.
Honestly, I see a lot of Mike Williams in his outcome ranges. Mike Williams was a big disappointment for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm. And he had
5 years.
Yeah, but
4 years, but
exactly. I could see them two having a very similar career trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Let's wrap us up with you guys' number 1 player, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Mm-hmm.
Dan has him first. John and Steve have him number 2. Ohio State player. 110 receptions, 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns. Last year, 5 receptions, 43 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a run to 40. He got shut. He was the player who got shut down, right? Or he just kind of
got hurt.
Got hurt.
He was hurt this year. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
no, he just had a down year. 5 receptions for 43 yards. Yeah. No, he was injured. He was injured. There's not much to say about, in my opinion, there's not much to say about JSN. He's the safest pick. He's the most ready NFL guy. Like he's, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave talk him up like he's the second coming of Christ. Like that's got to be a good thing when those two guys are lighting up the NFL and they're talking about him like, wait till he gets here. So, that's got to be a pretty good feeling. I just question. The only reason why I have Jordan Addison a little bit lower, and this is shame on me, is I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, can't win on the outside as well as Jordan Addison, as well as even Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson does it differently, but I just worry whether he'll just kind of get stuck into the slot and be an Amon-Ra St. Brown and just kind of work out of the slot and be great, be good at it. But, if you're going to use your 102 or 103 in a rookie draft, like I want someone who has alpha dog, potential. Like I want someone big, like that could really, again, be a focal point of an offense and not just be a productive touchdown guy. Like that's what scares me with JSN.
I'll give you 102 for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
yeah. So it's just kind of like, that's kind of, I'm just, again, and I think that's that's like his ceiling is that. So, I would just be, I love him. Obviously I have him second. So, I just, my only comparison between him and my number 1.
Steve, to your number 1 comparison?
Yeah. I mean, the only few things I don't really like about him it's not much. I mean, both him and Johnson were really close in terms of my rankings and how far apart I really had them. The only things I didn't like, I didn't see the true explosiveness I would want to see out of a guy who likely is going to play the slot at the next level. I don't know if he's going to be able to win on the outside, like kind of like John said already. So he might be a slot guy. And then, I don't like he had that amazing season last year. Was it last year, right? It was last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2021. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I wish I would have saw another fantastic season out of him. He probably would have been number 1, but the fact that he obviously was hurt, I don't want to take that away from at all. But I want to be sure he can actually come back and actually be at that level again. That's one thing concerns me with injuries is that can he make it back to that next level again? Can he show us another time? It's been almost over a year since he's, was an elite wide receiver into that nature. So that's kind of the only really reason why I have him at 2 here. He's not really far off from Johnston, to be honest. I mean, I think he probably will end up being the wide receiver 1 drafted more than likely just based on how scouts liked him so far, what I'm seeing. And he probably going to be the wide receiver 1 coming off your fantasy boards as well. So
it's funny on the note to his speed I have here, he doesn't have long speed, but he has insane quickness. Like he is quick. Like when he's you give him an inch, he'll take a mile, which is like kind of cool, which is a good quality to have. But you're right, on film, he doesn't show like this breakaway, I'm going to outrun you speed, but he has this sort of quick twitchiness about him that's really good.
Yeah, his short shuttle was a 3.93, which is like 90th percentile, and his three cone was 6.57, which is like also 85, 90th percentile.
Yeah.
So, Coach John, you were saying earlier that you trust the Steelers at their wide receivers, right?
I do.
Steelers draft a wide receiver, you take them, and
I trust them.
I'm that way with Brian Hartline. There's a reason that man has gotten so many head coaching offers in football, in college football, and I just trust Brian Hartline at this point to give me wide receivers that are going to produce the next level. You look at, how many fantasy relevant wide receivers that come out of Ohio State in the past 5 years.
I mean, you could start at Michael Thomas, work your way down.
You got Terry McLaurin, you got Chris Olave, you got Garrett Wilson, you got Jay Sanning. Hey, guess what? Spoiler alert: the best is yet to come next year.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Harrison Jr.
So I'm just at the point where I accept it. Like, Brian Hartline gives me a gift. I don't question it. I just say thank you. I'll take next year's model as well. So he does amazing things in Columbus with his receivers. And believe it or not, I know Dynasty Nerds gets a Ohio State homer moniker, but I am not from Ohio at all. So there is no homerism in this evaluation. He broke out at a not super early age, but an earlier age, and he produced on the field with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And like Coach John was saying, they interviewed those two about this draft class, and they just have nothing but the greatest things to say about JSN. And there's just so much smoke that I got to believe there's got to be a little bit of fire at the bottom of this thing. And he's my wide receiver 1, and it's not going to change draft capital, landing spot, what order they go in. I'm actually at the point where I'm about to break JSN off into his own tier, and he's going to be tier 1. And then Addison and Quentin Johnson can fight over their rankings in tier 2, because I just think he's a bulletproof prospect. His knock going into the pre-draft process was his speed. And yes, a 4.52 is not great, but guess what? It's also not the end of the world.
Yeah, fast enough.
And he's got elite quicks. He's gonna win in the short yardage area, and there's enough players in the NFL to do that I'm sold on it.
All right, well, that's it, folks. We got through the 12 wide receivers, and that's collective our rankings for this upcoming draft. Dan, do you want to shout out any of your upcoming work or stuff you're doing over at Dancing Nerds?
Yeah. So I've actually been mentioning this on all the shows that I've been doing recently. So I have been working on a big project at Dynasty Nerds that I'm very happy that I get to announce now. April 27th and April 28th are the first 2 nights of the NFL draft. And myself and my co-host Tim, we will actually be having a Dynasty Nerds live NFL draft watch along live stream. We'll be live nights 1 and nights 2. That's the first 3 rounds of the draft. We'll be on for 4 or 5 hours each night. We have a panel of guests. Steve is actually going to be joining us for a little bit there, and we're going to be providing the most live, instantaneous Dynasty rankings, reactions, and an analysis as it happens. It's a project I've been putting a lot of hours into all year, and it's been working in the back, but some things have finally, checked off, and I'm glad I got to announce it. And I'm so excited to share this project with the rest of the world in just, 3 short weeks, and which is scary because I think about the amount of work I have left to do before the show starts, but it'll be here before we know it. So, if anybody listening, I'd appreciate anybody coming out live those 2 nights and hanging out with us. It's going to be a great time.
Good luck and God bless, brother.
I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it.
Thank you. Side
by side, dual screen. Coach John, anything?
No, I got nothing. Actually, shout out my buddy's new golf company, Fade Golf. Okay. You want a hat? He's got a whole bunch of new colors out that just launched. Just look up Fade Golf on Instagram. My buddy just launched his company. It's hilarious so we call him Frankie Fades because all he does is fade the ball. And so he started this. They sell shirts and hats and stuff. So check him out. Other than that, I love rankings. I love off season. You guys want to chat, talk about how dumb I am, how great I am. Get me on Twitter, get me on your podcast. This is the fun part of the fantasy season where we all get to, talk about the prospects, which is the best part.
I'll wrap us up. Steve, do you have anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. This was definitely a really fun show. Definitely really informative. I hope you guys took what we said to heart to some extent, and obviously keep that in mind when these rookies actually do get drafted. Obviously, we'll be doing recaps and all that fun stuff. But this whole month of April here, we're going to be doing a lot of rookie talk here. Next week's running backs, and then we'll get to the tight ends and quarterbacks. Also, just keep you guys in mind. April 16th, we are doing our NFL mock draft, the coaches NFL mock draft here. John, Dan will be on, Jibs will be there. We're going to be just doing a mock draft of the first round. It's always a lot of fun. I always, put a little suit on as commissioner and try to make it fun as possible here. So, April 16th, I think it was like 7 p.m., I think, Eastern time, I have it set up for. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We did it last year, and people loved it. So tune into that. But, nothing else really. This was a lot of fun, and we'll be back next week, of course.
Thanks, Dan, for sharing your answers. Now I know.
Yeah, I hope you guys are taking notes.
I took copious notes.
The real test is in May.
I love it. Oh, I love it.
I don't know. Tune in next week, guys. What are we doing? Tight ends next week?
Running backs.
Running backs? Oh, yeah, running backs. The meat and potatoes of the fantasy.
I wonder who number one's going to be.
So, I'm Coach Steve. I'm not Coach Steve. I'm Coach James. Signing out.
Peace.